I'm the branch manager, you know. I can't be bothered with poor folks like you. Just wait over there, will ya?
I watched as he shooed them away with a dismissive wave. Grandpa's eyes locked onto him in anger. "Dan, this isn't good." I tried to stop Grandpa, but it was too late. Grandpa slammed the counter and shouted. Shortly after, that branch manager got his just desserts. "My name is Mike Smith. I work from home as a freelance web designer. My family consists of 5 people, my parents, my brother, and we also live with my grandpa. I'm not sure if Grandpa knows that I work from home, but he often asks me to do chores for him. Well, thinking back to when I was a kid, he used to drive me to school and lessons, gave me my allowance, so doing these tasks for him now isn't really a big deal. Since I was young, I've admired my grandpa for his strength and knowledge. He's good at carpentry and gardening. Even now, I still look up to him. He's nearing 80, but he's as cool as ever. Today, as usual, he's out tending to his hobby garden."
Mike, I need a favor.
"What is it?" "I just finished a part of my work, so I'm free now." Wiping his sweat with a towel, probably just coming in from the garden, Grandpa made his request.
I've been invited to a wedding tomorrow, but I totally forgot to buy the wedding. Can you drive me to the bank?
I glanced at the clock. It was showing 2 p.m. We were nearing the closing time for the bank's counters, and considering wedding gifts, I needed to buy something for the new couple, which should be helpful and luxurious from their wish list. With that thought, I quickly agreed, and we headed to the bank. Grandpa used to drive, but he gave up his license last year. With all the news about accidents involving older drivers, he decided it was better to give it up than be a burden. Probably, it was harder after Grandma passed. He often said that I couldn't drive without someone to be with me. I remember the day he proudly told me that he'd given up his license, and from then on, I'd be his chauffeur. The bank was crowded, and I braced myself for a long wait. Meanwhile, Grandpa had bumped into some acquaintances and was deeply engrossed in conversation. Grandpa's token number was 75, and the number currently being served was 50. I realized we might be here for a while and scanned the surroundings. It seemed like a small-town bank, with a majority of elderly clients. Many were engaging bank employees with various questions. Just as I was about to pull out my phone to kill time, a loud voice emanated from one of the counters.
You can't withdraw money with this debit card. Bring another one, like I've been telling you.
There stood a bank teller, wearing glasses and shaking his hefty belly, raising his voice at an elderly man. This man, dressed in a noticeably high-end suit and watch, lacked any hint of class. The old man, shouted at by him, left the bank looking quite dejected. The next person to be called was an intimidating middle-aged man wearing a gold necklace. He had a lot of tattoos and wore sunglasses. He looked like the stereotypical mobster. Now, the teller was serving him with extreme politeness and lots of bowing. It's quite rare to see someone change their attitude so drastically based on the customer. My gaze shifted to the ATM, and there was a young lady bank employee. She was patiently teaching an elderly woman how to use it. Given she's wearing a uniform, she must be a bank employee too. Her gentle smile while assisting customers tells that not all employees at this bank behaved like the rude male teller. Several minutes passed. As the bank was about to close, the waiting number was around the 70s. Then I noticed something odd. The rude teller's counter was displaying number 76. He seemingly skipped Grandpa's 75. During a brief lull, I approached the teller. "Excuse me, my number is 75, but it seems like it was skipped." The teller looked annoyed by my question. His name tag read John Nelson. I was curious to see how he would treat me. As expected, he responded dismissively to me, dressed casually in a t-shirt and jeans.
Oh, there wasn't a mistake. There's a priority system here?
Priority system?
Yeah. Bigger transactions are more beneficial for us. Besides, country folks like him probably have plenty of time, right? Just let him wait.
I was lost in what I wanted to say because of the teller's rude attitude. Then John was calling over another customer and essentially shooing me away. Angered by his condescending attitude, I returned to Grandpa's seat. Grandpa was patiently waiting while reading a book.
Mike, what happened?
Well, when I asked the teller why your number got skipped, he told me that country folks probably have plenty of time, so you guys can wait. It pissed me off.
That's ridiculous.
This branch got a new manager recently. The previous one was nice, but given how this new one lets John behave, I'm not sure about him.
Yeah, sudden changes often hint at underlying issues.
As we chatted, the kind young lady bank employee from the ATM approached us. Her name tag read Emily Mishra.
"I'm sorry for the wait. May I see your number, please? I'll check it for you."
Kneeling to match our eye level, Emily took the number from us. Then she went to John to verify, but he seemed to berate her. I couldn't help but rush over to confront him. "What's the issue?" Seeing me, John sighed loudly.
What is it? You again? Can't you wait just a little while?
But they have been waiting for quite some time.
Quiet down. I told you there's a hierarchy to customers, didn't I?
John interrupted Emily's words with that remark.
I've been saying to prioritize customers who are likely to be profitable for our bank. Consider my orders as coming from the higher-ups at the bank. We can put people like the elderly living off their pensions in the countryside on the back burner.
I was dumbfounded by his audacity. To my side, Grandpa was sizing up the situation. As John gave Grandpa a mocking look, he continued,
Come on. Elderly folks from places like this probably just hoard their pensions. They're not a big deal for the bank. If you were a banker, you'd be more adaptable. The elderly have plenty of time on their hands anyway. They can wait.
I couldn't believe he was a banker with that attitude and retorted, "Are you even a banker? I've never heard of a banker discriminating against customers."
Shut up. I'm the branch manager, and my dad is the bank CEO. The way I do things is the way this bank does things. I can't be bothered with poor folks like you. Just wait your turn.
Watching John waving his hand, Grandpa's eyes fixed on him. This is not good. I tried to stop Grandpa, but it was too late. Grandpa slammed the counter and shouted,
I can't trust a bank with a manager like you. I'll be moving all my deposits, as well as my company's, elsewhere. Arrange the full amount now.
With a stern voice, Grandpa made his demand. John looked startled momentarily, but then he returned to his condescending smirk. He checked Grandpa's bank account,
You're all talk. There probably isn't.
but his face started turning paler by the second. His face had gone beyond pale, looking almost ashen.
What?
What's wrong? Can't you handle a poor person's savings? I can wait however long it takes. Just get it ready.
Grandpa said this and heavily sat in the waiting room chair. John's face turned pale blue. It's no wonder. Grandpa is the CEO of a certain company. He's approaching 80, but he's still going strong. He might look like any ordinary elderly man, but when he's at work, he's an imposing figure and quite intimidating. I don't know the details, but his personal assets must be in the several $million, and the company's funds even more. His company, established by him, is quite big around here and contributes a lot to the community, and when he walks around town, many people greet him, and it can take him about 30 minutes to walk just 300 feet. So he was chatting with various acquaintances earlier, but it seems the branch manager didn't know about it. He's new to the job, so maybe that can't be helped, but the previous manager had visited our house when he took the position. Maybe John just didn't care enough. It could be said that John's disregard for customers led to this situation. Without saying a word, Grandpa continued to glare at John, as if not missing a single move. That look must have been absolutely terrifying to anyone on the receiving end of it. I remember when I was little, getting scolded by my grandpa was downright scary, so I can totally relate to that feeling.
Off.
Manager,
In apparent terror of Grandpa, John screamed and bolted from the place, running out of the bank. He recklessly started running, bolting out of the store.
He ran away. Mike, let's contact the main office. That guy said he was the CEO's son. We need to clean all the dirt from under the rug completely.
Grandpa said with a smirk. Once he gets like this, nothing can stop Grandpa. He's truly a force to be reckoned with. I was about to call the main office when someone approached us. It was Emily.
sir, I deeply apologize for our manager's behavior. I know it's impertinent, but could we have a moment of your time?
What? After that, we would learn shocking facts from her. We decided we would take down John completely. We then gathered various documents and prepared everything to close our accounts and headed to the bank's main office. Grandpa had already scheduled an appointment with the bank CEO. Dressed in suits, both Grandpa and I made sure to present ourselves impeccably. Besides my grandpa and me, there were two others. Slightly stocky employees also joined us. They were there for added security. We didn't take my usual car, but instead rode in a black luxury car reserved for the CEO. Upon arriving at the main office, the bank president greeted us with a smile and led us to a meeting room. Sitting there with a fake smile was probably John's father, Paul Nelson. Next to him, in stark contrast to before, was branch manager John with a confident smile, and behind him stood two men in black suits, looking like bodyguards.
I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience. It seems my foolish son has caused you some trouble.
I deeply apologize for the other day. I have reflected on my actions. Please understand.
John Nelson lowered his head. It sounded like a superficial and insincere apology. People don't change that easily, I thought to myself. I took out the documents I had prepared from my bag and spread them out on the desk.
I have prepared the cancellation documents here. From now on, we will no longer do business with you. My decision is final, and I won't change my mind. You not only insulted me, but also insulted the elderly pensioners in Nebraska and the people living there. I can't trust someone like you, especially if they're the son of the bank president.
At Grandpa's words, Paul's smile tightened. John's smile had completely disappeared, and he looked pale and downcast. However, as expected from someone who had risen to the top of a bank, Paul quickly composed himself and began speaking in a soothing voice.
Sir, I deeply apologize for John's behavior. I know it's impertinent, but could we have a moment of your time?
The president took out a piece of paper from his pocket and placed it on the desk. It was a check for $10 million. It was clearly a bribe. A deep furrow appeared between Grandpa's brows.
I'm not someone you can easily fool.
If you say it's not enough, I'll add more. I hope this will appease your anger.
Paul's hands rubbing together, trying to get closer to Grandpa, looked utterly brown-noser. I was getting fed up and just wanted to wrap things up and leave.
This isn't about the money. Can't you even understand that?
Of course, I'll make John resign, but this check is a gesture of my goodwill.
Wait, Dad. Why am I resigning?
Quiet. It's your responsibility.
But wasn't it your policy to increase profits? My branch had good sales? Wasn't that the answer?
Just shut up. If you hadn't messed up, we wouldn't be in this mess. There must have been a better way.
Excuse me, can I say something? I interrupted the bickering father and son. Regarding the profits your son mentioned, we've received complaints from the residents of Nebraska about aggressive sales tactics for financial products like investment trusts and insurance. Some people even mentioned being scammed into signing contracts. I've consolidated these complaints and consulted with the Better Business Bureau. I expect the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to intervene soon.
What?
I placed a printout listing the complaints on the desk. Paul snatched it up to check the contents. I assume many of your clients will be canceling their bank accounts soon, so you better be prepared. And now, here comes the main part. I slowly took out my tablet and began navigating. Displayed were a series of numbers. See this? Here, here, and here too. These are unauthorized withdrawals.
What do you mean?
Don't you get it? These are withdrawal records from your bank.
What? How do you have that data?
Well, who knows? I tried to play dumb with a smirk, but the two in front of me were turning red and then pale. Yes, this data was crucial evidence of the bank's wrongdoing. They had created fictitious accounts in John's branch and deposited money into them, evidence of embezzlement. Furthermore, I operated my tablet again, and these are John's stock trading records. On several occasions, he bought a large number of stocks just before their prices rose and then sold them all after the increase. It's so predictable it's almost funny. This is insider trading, isn't it? Did you leak information to your son, Paul? I also have evidence here. You should be careful with your email exchanges. If you don't delete them regularly, you never know who might read them. Displayed on the tablet were John's email records. Leaving such evidence behind when committing wrongdoings was plain naive. This information was given to me by someone. Emily Mishra worked at another bank and was essentially a spy. She had sensed something fishy about Paul and John and was discreetly aiming to bring them down. She had accessed John's computer, saved the records, and sent the data to me. Moreover, I obtained the necessary data by hacking based on that information. I am a white hat hacker who also collaborates with the cybercrime division of the FBI. I received a request from the FBI to gather information. Thanks to Emily, a collaborator this time, things progressed easily. I consulted with a trusted FBI agent and successfully exposed the wrongdoing. Of course, this evidence has also been handed over to the FBI. So, agents with arrest warrants should be arriving here soon. When I relayed this, Paul collapsed to his knees as if defeated.
It's over.
The outside of the room suddenly became noisy. It seems the agents have arrived. The two men in front of me were so shocked they could only let out silent screams. The next day, the front pages of newspapers were all about the scandal involving the local bank's CEO and his son. It was even covered on national news, making me realize how big of an issue it was. Due to the CEO's misconduct and policies that were too profit-focused, the bank's reputation plummeted. Eventually, it was decided that it would be merged with a rival bank. Of course, that bank was the one where Emily had worked. In the end, whether it was the arrest of the CEO and his son that put Grandpa at ease or not, he didn't move his deposit to another company. Well, it'd involve a significant amount of money, so maybe that was for the best. While glancing at the talk show discussing the bank's scandal, Grandpa and I were sipping our tea. I slowly drank the piping hot tea and nibbled on some cookies. Even though Grandpa turned 80 this year, he still had strong teeth to crunch on hard cookies. He's so lively that I'm sure he'll live a long life. I hope so. I want him to live up to around 150.
By the way, Mike, how's Emily doing?
Upon hearing Grandpa's words, I almost spit out my tea. But Grandpa, why do you ask?
There's nothing I don't know. So, how's she?
Oh, we just text on Messenger, that's all. Since then, I exchanged contacts with Emily and became friends. She's considerate and has a great sense of humor, so it's always fun talking to her. Right now, she's one of my good friends.
You could at least invite her for dinner, right? I'd love to hold my great-grandchild.
All right. You're going to live another 70 years, right, Grandpa? Maybe even see your great-grandchild's child.
Well, as much as I'd like to think so, 150 years might be pushing it. But with the advancements in medicine, who knows?
It seems Grandpa has plans to live a long life. I'd love to see him in the Guinness World Records. Before I knew it, the news had moved on to another topic. Upon noticing, Grandpa, with a huff, stood up and grabbed his straw hat for the garden. Looking at him, he's just a regular old man, and I'd never guessed the authority he once held. He's kind to those around him and well-liked, but when it comes down to it, he's super cool. I hope to be like Grandpa someday. I never want to be blinded by money, look down on others, or commit crimes. I made a silent vow to become an upright person, just like Grandpa, someone even his own grandchildren can look up to.
What's the matter? Not drinking? Has your stupid, unrefined taste never experienced real food, so you can't appreciate the taste of alcohol? If you can't understand this, you're no better than a dog. You know that.
My boss poured beer all over my head and forced me into a humiliating prostrated position. The insanity of it all was about to drive me mad. I had worked for this company with the belief that I wanted to support people in trouble, but it turned out there was a devil among us. My name is Robert Parker. I grew up in a children's home until I was 18. My mother passed away in an accident when I was just 3 years old. I found out when I became an adult that my father, who had abandoned my mother who was pregnant with me at 20, had already married another woman and had a child before I was born. To my father, I was just an obstacle to his new life, so he discarded me. After the accident that took my mother, I had no place to go but to the orphanage. I don't know about other places, but I think the environment was good there. The caregivers were nothing like my deadbeat biological father. They often played with us. Especially Jake Smith and his wife, Catherine, would go out of their way to prepare colorful, delicious homemade meals for us. Catherine, being an orphan herself, didn't want us kids to experience the loneliness she did, so she put a lot of effort into her cooking. Delicious omelets accompanied by crispy shrimp, adorned with playful tiny flags, or the fresh vegetables we prepared together right out of the farmer's market. I loved the times when we would all sit around and discuss school and friends over such meals. One time, Jake brought a gaming console for all the kids in the facility, and we played it late into the night until Catherine told us off, saying enough, go to bed now. Such fun memories. Considering my background, I believe I was very well educated. All thanks to the love and care of the Smith couple. Catherine must have had a pretty tough time in the past, because she still has a quote that stays with her to this day.
Even if people ridicule you for being an orphan, it doesn't determine your worth. Those who belittle others like that are the ones with impoverished hearts. As long as you have compassion, any life you lead is a good one.
Thanks to her, I grew up without any significant hardships or rebellious phases. The only concern was that I had to leave the children's home by the age of 18. Most kids went on to work, but I loved studying and wanted to go to college. As my 18th birthday approached, I became more reticent, which greatly worried Jake and Catherine. They wanted me to stay happy in the short time we had left together. The two faces staring at me looked worried. I didn't want to worry them either. Eventually, I opened up about my wish to attend college. But I'm already grateful for how you've raised me without any hardships, considering I was an abandoned child. I just wanted to share my feelings. I'll definitely work after turning 18, like my elder brothers here. Both of you, thank you. With that said, we had our usual joyful dinner that evening. Later, they shared astonishing news with me. There was a benefactor named Long Legs. He wanted to support my college education. The condition is that I report my college grades through the Smith couple. Not to inquire about the true identity of Long Legs. I eagerly agreed. I studied intensely during the last phase of my high school years and managed to get enough SAT score to enter the university of my wish. Jake and Catherine were overjoyed at my achievement. They took me to an upscale French restaurant, keeping it a secret from the others at the facility. I had never known that every dishes could be so beautifully created and taste so delicate. It was an elegant world, unlike anything I had experienced before. While I cherished the meals we had, the joy and emotions of that day with them were unforgettable. As a college student, I stayed at Jake and Catherine's residence and commuted to college. The couple had no children of their own, so they cared for me as if I were their own son. During this time, I started referring to them as Dad and Mom. At some point after moving in, I discovered a massive burn scar on my adoptive mother's back. It was a severe burnt scar covering half of her back. She cheerfully told me, a long time ago, our house caught fire. My biological mother had also passed away in a traffic accident. I wondered if medical advances could have healed that scar or saved my birth mother. Thinking about this made me want to work for a medical equipment company. I studied rigorously during my 4 years at college and graduated as honored student. As a result, I landed a job at my wish of a company who produces cutting-edge medical equipment, offering new treatments. My in-laws were overjoyed, with tears in their eyes. Therefore, the job was very much challenging. On one hand, I had to memorize a mountain of technical terms, and on the other, I had to deal with field work and support actual products. I was incredibly busy, but the job was rewarding. Thanks to the new products, I occasionally received gratitude from doctors and patients. It felt great. I wanted to support many more people with the new medical advancements, which unfortunately didn't come in time for my birth mother or adoptive mother. My adoptive parents would sometimes watch over me, their faces glowing with pride, as I worked with this mission in mind. Maybe I should start by giving back to them. Oh, when I get my bonus, I'll take them to that memorable French restaurant they once took me to. I can't wait. About 6 months passed, and my mentor-like boss, who guided me strictly yet kindly, was promoted to the headquarters. In his place, a new boss, Kyle, joined. Apparently, he was a rising star, freshly back from an overseas trip. I was looking forward to hearing his stories, but he turned out to be quite the character. Kyle went out of his way to dig up our resumes and never missed an opportunity to make sarcastic comments. He always spoke as if everyone else was inferior to him. The office atmosphere soured just by his presence, especially towards me.
How did a poor kid from an orphanage like you even manage to go to college? Did you scam your way through? I can't believe someone like you is handling our products. You're devaluing the company. You should just quit. You should prioritize fixing your rotten personality, which seems more focused on salary than actual patient care. I'm talking about you.
His comments were particularly harsh. I missed my previous boss, but I didn't want to think about switching jobs, especially when I had just landed one that could help others. After all, it was my adoptive father who had suggested this company out of the many medical manufacturers. Remembering my adoptive mother's teachings, I thought, what a pathetic guy who can't live without belittling others, and calmed my anger towards Kyle. One day, while enduring Kyle's torment, I finally received my first bonus. Kyle was teasing again, saying no money, no honey, Robert. Is he finding that funny? Kyle was annoying to other competent colleagues as well, but his interactions with me, the youngest in the department, were especially bothersome. Today, even though I never asked, he just keeps going on and on about going to dinner with his prized fiancée. Seems like she's the young and beautiful daughter of a well-known company.
You're so young, yet you don't have a single girlfriend. Poor thing. Look at me, on the fast track with the CEO's daughter as my fiancée. But then again, it might be impossible for someone like you.
Seemingly satisfied, Robert finally left the office. I need to shake off this feeling by 6 p.m. I had an important plan for the day. After all, it was the day I'd invited my adoptive parents to that special tempura restaurant. At 5:45 p.m., I straightened my suit, which my adoptive parents had bought for me, and opened the door to the restaurant. I'm Robert. I had a reservation. As I entered, a man and a woman were chatting cheerfully.
Kyle is so capable at work and so kind to me. He's truly wonderful. But that Robert, I wonder how long he plans to stick around in our company.
I think so too, Lily. We don't need poor people in a company where only elites gather.
To my surprise, it was Kyle and his fiancée. Why are they here? I was so shocked that I froze in place. When Kyle noticed me, our eyes met. This could turn into quite a situation.
Robert, what are you doing here?
I couldn't let this ruin the special occasion. I responded calmly. Today, I wanted to treat my parents with my first bonus, so I reserved this place. It's such a coincidence. Is she the fiancée you mentioned? Kyle's fiancée, Lily, with her stunning beauty and short haircut, gave me a disdainful look the moment our eyes met. It seemed she'd heard all sorts of rumors about me from Kyle. Oh, this is bad.
Aren't you a bit out of your league? That suit, that tie, looks pretty cheap. Do folks like you even understand the taste of a place like this?
Kyle started to mock me, just like he does at work.
Yeah, having some poor schmuck like you here just brings down the place's reputation, doesn't it? Don't be a nuisance outside of work. Well, since we're here, let me pour you a drink.
Kyle took an open beer bottle and aggressively poured it over my head. My prize suit, a gift from my adoptive parents, was completely soaked. Watching it, Lily laughed. Oh my gosh, suits you.
Tastes good, doesn't it? The first drink after work. Oh, what a waste spilling it on the floor.
You're Robert, right? I've heard about you from Kyle. Sneaky moves to graduate college. Grew up in an orphanage. Obsessed with money? Poor people are so uncivilized. Disgusting. You probably find Kyle's drink better than the muddy water you've been used to, right? It's a shame to spill it on the floor. Go on, lick it up.
What's the matter? Not drinking. Never had a proper meal, so your taste buds can't recognize good liquor. If you don't get this, you're worse than a dog.
Kyle grabbed my beer-soaked head, trying to force me down onto the floor. Kyle, please stop. My parents will be here soon. If they see this, we won't be able to enjoy our meal. Kyle scoffed.
Still on about that. Seeing your parents while you're this drenched. I'd lose it if I were in your shoes. Always being corrected like this in front of others. Do you enjoy showing your incompetence?
If only I could have said, the crazy one here is you. How much were my adoptive parents looking forward to today? How devastated would they be to see their son in this state? The moment I ran into Kyle here, I knew this day was ruined. I fell to my knees just as they wished, weak and defeated. Kyle seemed like the devil. He said with an apparent glee,
Bottom feeders from foster homes, go home.
Then, the restaurant door opened.
You, what on earth are you doing?
Standing there was my adoptive father. My adoptive mother followed, looking at me in shock. This is it. Kyle suddenly put on a thick facade, as if his previous behavior was all a lie.
Jake. Are you and your wife here for dinner? How about joining us at our table?
Jake, what's he talking about? My foster dad spoke in a cold voice I had never heard in 20 years.
Kyle, I'll ask you once more. What exactly are you doing?
Without a doubt, he was furious. A side of him I'd never seen. Kyle replied, visibly puzzled.
Whatever do you mean? Oh, Robert. He's the lowest of the low in our company. He said he was here for dinner with his parents in a place like this. So, I was about to kick him out. Adoptive parents, I presume, figures they'd be just as pathetic. Taking in some random orphan, what a waste. Come on, Jake, join us before this loser's parents show up.
We are his parents.
Kyle and Lily looked utterly bewildered. My adoptive mother stepped forward.
How dare you make my son look like a drowned rat?
Kyle began to panic.
You must be joking. I was told you had no children.
Still trembling with quiet anger, my adoptive father replied,
That's right. We don't have any biological children, but we have a son right here, whom we've loved more deeply than any blood relation. Robert, who you just called trash, is a far better man than you could ever be.
Drenched in beer, I asked, "Dad, Mom, what's this about being a chairman?" Once they were found out, they reluctantly told me the truth. My adoptive mother was raised in a wealthy Christian home. One day, there was a fire that burned down their mansion, and she lost her parents. When she almost lost hope due to the coldness and shallowness of people, it was my adoptive father who comforted her. Eventually, using the inheritance she had left, my adoptive mother founded the medical equipment manufacturing company that Kyle and I now work for. Both of them hold the position of retired chairpersons. The company, founded with the simple principle of wanting to help those in need, generated enormous profits from that sentiment. They quietly operated children's shelters and supported a foundation that helped children like me get a college education. Yes, the foundation that sent me to college was run by my adoptive parents.
Robert, we weren't showing off for being arrogant with what we did. We're just like you. We simply want to help those in need. I was truly happy when you told us you wanted to work for our company with the same sentiment. And if I said I was the chairperson, you, with your sharp intuition, would have realized that the foundation was run by us. We wanted you to choose your own path, Robert. That's all there was to it.
My adoptive mother continued,
Kyle, I really underestimated you. After being with us for 10 years, how could you mock someone who grew up in an institution right in front of me, who also lost her parents? It's a direct insult to our founding principle.
It was clear that Kyle had no way out. However, Kyle tried to worm his way in with a fake smile. It was Kyle who was obsessed with power and money more than anyone. Having been raised surrounded by kind staff at the children's home, it was my first time seeing someone cling to their current status so desperately and shamelessly. My adoptive father finally delivered the blow to Kyle. He was cornered by my adoptive mother to the point of pity.
Think of it as you not having a seat from tomorrow.
Kyle was devastated. Later, my adoptive parents heard everything Kyle had done to me, and an internal audit was conducted in my department. Given the testimonies from other employees who were verbally abused by Kyle and the fact that he had splashed beer on me, grabbed my head, all of which had been witnessed by the chairman couple, Kyle was punished. He was dismissed from his position, had to pay compensation to multiple victims including me, and his engagement was broken off. Lily, who was there, exclaimed, "Wait, what you told me was completely different. You lied to me."
Well, I have no use for someone who's off the promotion track, she declared, breaking off the engagement on the spot and leaving the restaurant.
My adoptive father laughed heartily, saying, "What a decisive woman." As a follow-up, my adoptive mother made a suggestion to the current president, and I was promoted to headquarters. They transferred me to work of my former boss. Meeting my decent boss after such a long time, he consoled me saying, "It seems like you've been through a lot. I'm glad you stayed and didn't quit." I almost cried. And today is the day for revenge. I wore the same suit I had just sent to the cleaners that day. The best outfit gifted to me by my parents, saying it suited me well. We chatted while enjoying fresh vegetables, fluffy fish, and delicious meals. Even in a place I used to think was for grown-ups, I no longer felt nervous. My father spoke up.
Robert, thank you for growing up to be such a fine young man. You're my pride and joy, working hard for so many people.
My mother was teary-eyed.
You studied hard in college, graduated at the top of your class, and now you're working at our company with the same ideals we have. I'm so proud.
I turned to them and expressed my gratitude. Dad, Mom, thank you for raising me so well. You both are my pride and joy.
What?
Night school. Does that even count as being in college? Any low achiever can attend there. It's preposterous to even call it a college. I can't let my precious daughter marry someone like you,
said my father-in-law, glancing at me with disdain. I had come to propose to my beloved Catherine, but her father was vehemently opposed to our marriage. I may be attending a night school, but it's a legitimate college. How dare he say like that? But even if it's night school, I started to argue, but he cut me off.
That's why I hate idiots. Get out of my sight, you loser.
He threw a tissue box at me, filled with contempt. Unable to stand it, I stormed out of their house. Years later, I would encounter my father-in-law again, and his attitude would be dramatically different. This is the story of reverse of my life. My name is Thomas Johnson. Raised by a single mother, we struggled financially. My mother worked multiple part-time jobs and did piecework at home. Sometimes, she even took night shifts, constantly working. She was already frail and seemed to shrink further under the strain. Despite knowing how hard she worked, I felt helpless and frustrated. During the summer of my second year in high school, the inevitable happened. My mother collapsed at her job. Although it wasn't life-threatening, she was hospitalized for a few days. Fortunately, my mother's hospital stay was brief, and she was soon discharged. Despite the doctor's advice to ease her exhausting workload, she promptly returned to her usual routine, insisting she was fully recovered. However, once broken, things don't heal that quickly. Eventually, she needed to be admitted to a general hospital. Time passed, and I was in the summer of my third year in high school, a period when everyone struggles with their future paths. I was no exception, grappling with the dilemma, what can I do for my mom? This became a pivotal point in deciding my future. Now, my mother is hospitalized. Thanks to her hard work, we had some financial breathing room. But considering her potential prolonged hospital stay, I thought about working right after graduating high school. Unsure whom to turn to for advice, I confided in my teacher. My teacher listened and then quietly said,
Johnson, your desire to help your mother is commendable, but you have impressive academic achievements. I believe you should also consider pursuing college. It will broaden the ways you can help your mother. Plus, there's the option of part-time student. You can work during the day and study at night. It would be a shame to stop your education now.
I was surprised by my teacher's advice. At that time, I hadn't known about part-time student. After graduating high school, I was torn between working or continuing to college. I only knew these two options, but attending and part-time student meant I could earn money for my mom's hospital and living expenses while studying. This would expand the ways I could help her in the future. My worries about my path cleared up, and I successfully enrolled in a part-time student the following spring. As a part-time student, I immediately started looking for work. I took any job I could find, from store shifts and night labor to manual work at construction sites. I wasn't picky about the work. I just did whatever seemed possible. At night, I attended college to study. Whenever I had a bit of spare time, I visited my mother at the hospital. Though living near the hospital was helpful, this life meant earning money, but not having enough time with my mother. That worried me. Once, while killing time at the hospital's cafe before visiting my mother, something caught my eye. Reaching for a napkin, I noticed a cute handwritten note in the holder. Cafe staff needed inside the hospital. Work surrounded by beautiful views and the aroma of coffee. It struck me. That was it. A way to earn money while spending more time with my mother. I might not be a doctor, but I could work in the hospital's cafe. Always close to my mother, close to home. Plus, it would save on travel expenses. I approached the counter. "Excuse me, I'm interested in working here," I said to an employee named Catherine. She smiled warmly.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
"Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to it too." Soon after, I began working at the cafe with Catherine Smith. Of course, there were other staff members, but she was always there, no matter when I clocked in. So, most of what I learned was from Catherine. She was bright, always smiling, carefree yet serious, and dedicated to her work. She seemed to love working at this cafe, and she was a great teacher. Thanks to her, I quickly learned the job and was thriving. The cafe inside the hospital wasn't overly crowded, but there was a constant flow of people. Patients in gowns, casually dressed visitors, doctors in white coats, and nurses. Especially, seeing the patients who come in every day stirred an indescribable sadness in me. I made sure to treat all customers equally and respectfully. However, I must admit, there was a hint of envy and jealousy towards the doctors and nurses. Of course, I was grateful to them for treating and caring for my currently hospitalized mother. I'm grateful to the doctors and nurses who do things for my mother that I can't. But maybe that's why. Somehow, I felt they lived in a different world than me. Gratitude and jealousy, is it? My feelings were complex.
Johnson, I'm stepping out for a bit. Can you keep an eye on the shop? Call me if anything comes up.
Yay, sure, I got it. After working for a while, Catherine and I, being close in age, had grown quite friendly and could talk openly. She really is a thoughtful, wonderful person. As I watched Catherine leave the cafe, an elderly man in a white coat approached me. He wasn't a usual sight in the cafe, but I recognized his face.
Oh, is that you, Thomas?
"Dr. Brown, thank you for everything."
Ah, so it is you. Sorry for not being around lately. How old are you now?
"I just turned 20.
Well, time waits for no one, does it? You've grown up.
Dr. Brown was my mother's primary physician. Also, he is the director of this hospital. You'd expect a general hospital director to be quite pompous, but he is different. He doesn't act superior like other doctors and has a very human touch. He remembers each patient and their family personally. And his skills are unquestionably exceptional. He's an amazing doctor without a single flaw. Because of his character, he's very popular among doctors, nurses, and patients and is always busy. Some patients even travel from afar specifically to see him. He often regrets not being able to spend enough time with each patient.
I had some spare time, so I decided to visit the cafe after a long while. I love the courtyard view from here. It's quite soothing, right?
Yes, it is. I often find myself getting lost in it.
I can imagine. By the way, you're working here at the cafe now, Thomas.
Yes, that's right. It's close to my home and I can visit my mom easily. It's a really good job for me. As you said, the view is lovely.
Oh, that's great. But at your age, you're probably in college, right? I don't mean to pry, but are you not attending school?
I'm going to a night school. During the day, I work here to earn money for my mom's hospital bills and our living expenses.
That's a smart approach. You're always so clever, Thomas.
Dr. Brown thought for a moment and then said, "I've just had an idea." Dr. Brown,
Yes, I've just had a great idea. Would you like to hear it?
following his suggestion, I started working as a nursing assistant at the hospital. Nursing assistants don't require specific qualifications. It's a job where I can take care of patients, support nurses, and maintain the hospital environment without being directly involved in medical procedures. I even got to care for my mom a bit. Nursing assistants are predominantly women, yet the job often involves physical labor. So, I took the initiative in heavy lifting and physical tasks, utilizing the strength I had built from previous manual labor. After completing the task, I took a deep breath and the head nurse approached me.
Good job, Thomas. Ever since you joined, you've taken on most of the physically demanding tasks. I feel bad for relying on you so much, but you've been a huge help. Thank you.
Being appreciated was genuinely fulfilling, especially coming from the head nurse. The work of a nursing assistant is tough, tougher than any job I've had before. But being thanked and seeing the joy it brings makes the hardship vanish into thin air. It might seem trivial to some, but helping others and bringing them joy meant everything to me. I found a sense of purpose in working at the hospital, helping people. It made me aspire to be a doctor, to save more lives. This was the first time I vaguely thought about becoming a doctor. Until now, I had worked relentlessly just to survive. But now, I wonder if even someone like me can dream. Could I become a doctor if I worked hard enough? I felt excited for the first time in a while, imagining a bright future. There's another reason I feel optimistic about the future. It's about Catherine, with whom I worked at the cafe. Not long after we met, Catherine and I began dating. Now, our relationship has progressed to the point where we're considering marriage. We never fight, and I feel a bit pampered by Catherine's generous heart. She understands my circumstances and continues to support and stand by me, even now as a nursing assistant. We were truly happy. As time went on, we finally decided to meet each other's parents to talk about marriage. First up were Catherine's parents. Her father works as a doctor at the General Hospital. It makes sense now why Catherine was working at the hospital's cafe. Perhaps her parents wanted her to work somewhere under their watchful eyes, cherishing her as their precious daughter. But I haven't actually met Catherine's father yet. However, hearing from the head nurse and that stern doctor that Dr. Smith is quite intimidating and often seen scolding people made me a bit nervous about meeting him. Moreover, Catherine is an only child. I doubted that her parents would easily agree to let their treasured daughter marry just like that. My anxiety grew.
Hey, are you okay? You look pretty pale. Are you nervous?
Catherine furrowed her brows and smiled at me. Yay, sorry. It's just, I am pretty nervous.
It's okay. I know there are rumors that he's scary, but I'm here with you, right?
How pathetic of me. I've never been this nervous in my entire life. We slowly made our way to Catherine's house.
Here we are.
Catherine suddenly stopped. I looked around, and there was a mansion just like out of a painting. Wow, this is incredible.
Don't worry, don't worry. Come on in.
Guided by Catherine, I entered through the grand entrance where her parents were waiting.
Hello, Thomas. Welcome.
Catherine's mother is always kind, like mother, like daughter. But Catherine's father looked stern, his mouth a tight line as he stared at me. Was he glaring at me? It didn't feel welcoming at all.
Come on, we're going to the living room.
Led by Catherine's mother, we all headed to the living room. While having tea and chatting, Catherine's father finally spoke.
You, which college do you attend?
H College.
H College. I heard you work at the cafe even during the day.
Oh, I attend night school. His questioning felt intimidating, but I answered anyway. Catherine's father snorted.
What, night school? Is that even considered attending college? That's just a place where even the lowest of the low can go. It's not even worthy of being called a college. Just a gathering place for lowlifes.
At that moment, I must have looked like a complete fool. A simple answer returned with tenfold of sarcasm. Ignoring Midam's strict expression, he continued,
You, when you entered this property, didn't you feel out of place? Didn't you feel even a bit that this place was not suitable for someone like you?
Catherine and her mother looked a bit concerned from the corner of my eye.
Well, working together is fine. Being friends is fine too. But when it comes to marrying my daughter, it's a different matter. I can see a lowly night school student like you making Catherine happy. Leave now.
I gathered my courage and spoke to Catherine's father. I don't believe I can make Catherine happy as I am now, but I aim to become a doctor in the future. So, please, when I mentioned my dream of becoming a doctor, Catherine's father raised his voice.
How naive you are. You say you aim to be a doctor. Being a doctor is not something just anyone can become. What do you need? A sharp mind and money. Both are essential. But what about you now? Night school, wasn't it? What can you learn there? You think you can become a doctor just by watching others work. Even with all the studying, you won't even make it into medical school with a brain like yours. We live in different worlds. The path to becoming a doctor is even more difficult after getting into medical school. You, who can't even reach the starting line, aspire to be a doctor. I don't want to see your face. Get out.
As he said that, he threw a tissue box at my face. I couldn't stand it anymore. Holding back tears that threatened to spill, I ran out of the house.
Thomas, wait, please.
I heard Catherine's voice as I ran. Her voice grew closer, and she grabbed my arm.
Thomas.
Seeing Catherine breathless and looking at me, my tears finally flowed.
I'm so sorry for my father's rudeness. I know, sorry isn't enough, but
Catherine, on the verge of tears herself, apologizing to me sincerely. The only thing I could say to her was, "Catherine, look up, no more apologies." Sure, I was shocked by your father's words, but I understand what he meant. You are their precious only daughter. It's no wonder they can't easily accept someone like me from just anywhere. That's okay, because your happiness is my happiness. I was ready to let go of Catherine. It was painful, but inevitable. However, I was determined to do whatever I could. I wouldn't give up any further. Time passed, and 20 years later, I'm now in a lab coat in a general hospital. The facilities here are great. Having a bit of free time, I was chatting with Dr. Brown. Then, from a distance, a familiar voice reached my ears.
Oh hey, Director. Hello there.
The voice approached. At first, I couldn't remember, but when I saw the face clearly, it clicked.
Oh, it's you, Dr. Smith. How have you been? It's been a while since we last talked.
Smith, Catherine's father. There I was, next to Dr. Brown, and opposite us was Catherine's father. He seemed oblivious to my presence, chatting with Dr. Brown, and finally glanced my way.
Oh, you are, the guy who went to night school, right? I remember you. You gave us quite a show back then.
I vaguely remember those days. I thought of saying something like, "You haven't changed at all," but he continued, dripping with sarcasm.
Well, and that lab coat. What's wrong? Poor and sick now. You should seek divine intervention.
That's when Dr. Brown sighed heavily and addressed Catherine's father.
Dr. Smith, I'm dismayed to hear that. You should be seeking help from him, right here. Thomas Johnson will be your savior.
Catherine's father, confused, paused, and then started laughing.
Director, that's a poor joke. How could any disaster lead me to seek help from him?
Listen, as the director of this hospital, I'm dead serious. Your surgeon is this man right here, Thomas Johnson. He is the one who will cure your illness.
What?
It was unbelievable. It seemed as if a miracle had occurred, judging by the look on Catherine's father's face. The story goes back a few days. When Catherine's father had a checkup, something was found. Further detailed examinations revealed a disease. He had no symptoms, but it couldn't be ignored. If left untreated, it would certainly lead to death. Surgery was necessary for this difficult disease. There were many skilled doctors at this hospital, but who could ensure a successful surgery? Who would take on this crucial task? And Dr. Brown shows me.
Director, this is absolutely preposterous. Is he not sick? How can someone ill treat someone's illness? Besides, he has no education. First and foremost, without a medical license, he can't perform surgery.
Dr. Brown, speechless with disbelief, couldn't muster a response. I decided to speak up for my own honor. Dr. Smith, with all due respect, I am not ill. I'm wearing this examination gown for a checkup. I've returned to this country after a long time, and the director recommended I get checked. Also, I genuinely hold a medical license. Back when I was working as a nursing assistant, Dr. Brown caught me secretly watching the doctor's work. He approached me about it. At that moment, I confessed my aspiration to become a doctor. He listened attentively, nodding along. He recognized my dedication and passion for medicine and agreed to support my medical education financially. I questioned him about his willingness to fund a stranger like me. "I'm grateful for your offer, but why would you do this to someone like me, like a stranger?"
Well, Thomas, that's a sad thing to say. You're not a stranger to me. First, you're the child of a patient dear to me, and an important part of our hospital family. You have a very dedicated heart. And with your sharp mind, you understand the mission you've been given. You want to help people like your mother, to make many happy, right? I see a younger version of myself in you. That's why I think it's natural for me to want to help you. This is an investment in the future for me.
I was indeed fortunate to be surrounded by such people. Relying on his words, I studied hard to get transferred to medical school. The other doctors assisted me, and Dr. Brown himself taught me whenever he could. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I had to repeat a year, but eventually managed to get into medical school. Once in, everything went smoothly, and I successfully obtained my medical license. Catherine's father listened to my story, but still seemed skeptical, frowning in disbelief. Well, he was the one who had said those things back then. It's no surprise he wouldn't believe it.
It's hard to believe, even if we assume you have a medical license. My illness isn't something just anyone can treat. It's not a common disease. A complicated surgery like this can't be entrusted to a novice doctor like you.
Dr. Smith, I thought you were a dedicated physician, always up to date with medical information. But I was wrong. Not knowing Johnson's numerous achievements, it seems you've been slacking in keeping informed.
Dr. Brown spoke, clearly dismayed. When I finally obtained my medical license with the help of lots of people, I was elated to finally be able to make my mother happy. But then, she passed away.
Thomas, now you have to make not just me but many people happy. There are many in this world who need your hands. I was happy to have such a fine son like you.
My mom's kind words were my last support. My mom's spirit still lives on in my heart. Carrying her words close to my heart, the words she left me, to save as many people as I can with my hands. I decided to dedicate myself as a member of Doctors Without Borders to helping those in need around the world. This job often took me to dangerous places. In some overseas locations, medical practices are not as advanced as in the US, and the challenges are unique. There were places rife with infectious diseases, where I even felt my own life was in danger. But I went, regardless of the risks. Thankfully, my relentless efforts were recognized globally, and now I'm a sought-after surgeon, receiving calls from around the world. In this country, I'm embarrassingly treated with high regard in almost any hospital I visit. Recently, I've been busy touring countries, and upon returning from a hospital in Southeast Asia, I was contacted by Dr. Brown about Catherine's father's case. Though he had once belittled me if he needed my help, I had no reason to refuse. I returned to Catherine's father after hearing about his condition from Dr. Brown and agreeing to be the lead surgeon.
Thomas, or should I say, Dr. Johnson, the world-renowned doctor. I'm really grateful. It must be a complex situation for you. But please, do this favor for me.
Overdoing it a bit, aren't you? Besides, I can separate personal feelings from my work.
I see.
It's been 20 years, but it must have been a shocking turn of events for Catherine's father. Still disbelieving, he wore a puzzled expression, but as it was time for the next examination, I said, "Dr. Smith, I assure you that I will cure your disease and ensure you can continue your admirable work as a doctor. I will make this surgery a success." He nodded in agreement, and Catherine's father still looked incredulous. I left the room, heading to the next examination. Several days passed, and it was time for his surgery. As expected, the surgery was extremely challenging and took several hours. Nonetheless, it was a success. Recovery depends on the patient, but he should be able to return to work soon. It was one of the most nerve-wracking surgeries I had performed in a while. After the surgery, I conducted several follow-up examinations. Catherine's father, checking his own test results and medical records, seemed pleased each time. On one of the examination days, "Dr. Smith, how are you feeling today? Any changes?"
Thomas, no, Dr. Johnson. I truly can't thank you enough. My health is undoubtedly improving every day. All thanks to you.
What? Could it be an overdose of some medication? I've never seen him so subservient before.
Dr. Johnson, your skills are truly authentic. Please forgive my many past indiscretions. If I had been the one performing my surgery, honestly, it probably wouldn't have been successful. But you managed to do it in just a few hours. Your skills are a treasure to the American and indeed the global medical community. I'm truly embarrassed that I was unaware of such a remarkable physician as yourself. It's shameful that I've been so arrogant. It's presumptuous of me to ask, but I must swallow my pride and request this. Please, once I'm able to come back again, could I possibly learn directly from you, Dr. Johnson? I'd be grateful to gain from your skills and knowledge.
Dr. Smith, you're being too kind. I separate my professional life from my personal life, so please don't worry. I'm still learning myself. Someone with your extensive experience as a doctor would have already mastered all the techniques and knowledge I know. For now, please don't think too much and just rest. Maintaining the professional demeanor of a doctor with a patient, trying not to add any psychological stress, I left the room after making sure everything was all right. It's funny, though, how people can completely change their attitude. But I had to refocus and went to see my next patient. His condition remained stable, and he would likely be discharged soon. Once again, he would return to his role as a doctor, continuing to save many patients. With a bit of spare time, I decided to visit the cafe where I used to work.
Welcome.
A young man about the age I was back then greeted me. He, too, was gazing out the window at the view. Yes, this view is still as calming as it was. I get it, young man. Despite the busyness of my life, the view remained unchanged, still offering solace. Then I heard a familiar voice from afar.
Is that you, Thomas?
It was Catherine. People change over 20 years, but some semblances remain. Catherine, You haven't changed a bit. It's been a long time.
Fancy meeting here again. It reminds me of when we first met.
Yeah, it's been decades. Are you here to visit your father?
Yeah, I have some time before visiting ours. So I thought I'd stop by. And then to meet the man who saved my father's life, Thomas. No, Dr. Johnson. I've heard about your work. You've been saving lives all over the world. And then, in a roundabout way, you saved my father's life too. I can't thank you enough. Really, thank you.
Catherine excitedly grasped my hand. Surprised, I looked down at our joined hands and noticed something sparkling on her left ring finger. A ring. Of course. 20 years is a long time. A woman like Catherine would have had many suitors. It's sad, but if I said it didn't hurt, I'd be lying. I found myself staring at Catherine's wedding ring for quite some time. Then Catherine spoke up.
Oh, this. I got married a few years ago. Thomas, I'm really sorry about that time. I was genuinely happy with you, spending those days together. I was serious about marrying you. But then, the day you came to visit my home, I think I hurt you beyond imagination. I've always felt a pang of guilt about it. I wanted to apologize, but I didn't have the courage. I don't think saying sorry now changes anything, but I've been wanting to say it for so long. I'm truly sorry.
So Catherine had been blaming herself all these years, maybe even for decades. Catherine, you haven't done anything wrong since then, so don't worry about it. In fact, thanks to your father going so far as to say what he did, it kind of lit a fire under me. His words made me work harder to get to where I am now.
Thomas, you haven't changed. You're still so kind.
It's not true that I wasn't bothered by it. Somewhere in my heart, I thought that if I became a respectable doctor, I could start over with Catherine, maybe even gain her father's approval. But as I got busy with my medical career, those feelings faded, and I focused purely on wanting to help as many people as possible. So this reunion, being able to talk with Catherine again, feels like closure. Anyway, it's the visiting time, right? Your father was looking forward to seeing you after a long time.
Oh, right. I have to go. Thank you for getting along with my father. I'll hear more about your accomplishments from him later. See you.
I watched Catherine leave and then turned my gaze back to the scenery outside the window. Mom, are you watching? Despite everything, I'm living a happy life. I sometimes wonder what it would be like if Mom were here. In my life, there have been many obstacles. There were many difficulties. There were headwinds, too. But no matter how tough the road, if you keep your core and keep running, a path will surely open up. As a doctor, I want to save lives. But I also want to pass on this belief. It might save someone's heart, too. For the joy of many, I continue my consultations today.
Today was my high school reunion. Originally, I was from New York. I've been living in rural Nebraska for a while now and hadn't attended a reunion in quite some time. However, this time, with an invitation from a former classmate, I decided to join and see some familiar faces. Given that it was held around Thanksgiving, I chose to wear a white tee under a short-sleeved striped shirt with beige pants, aiming for a casual yet neat appearance. I debated wearing a jacket, but since I don't usually wear suits, I decided against it. The venue was in a renowned hotel's banquet hall in downtown. Now in our 40s, there's quite a variance in how my classmates look.
You've aged, haven't you? Isn't your hair all gray?
You haven't changed at all.
Exchanging such banter, we nibbled on snacks and sipped our drinks. Then suddenly, someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind. I turned around, and it was Bob.
Look at you, out of place here. What happened to you? Don't you feel embarrassed being a poor farmer?
He looked down on me, flaunting his suit.
People like you, who don't know the value of things, probably can't understand this luxury suit.
I remember, he wasn't like this before. I gazed at him with a tinge of sadness. Actually, back in high school, Bob and I were best friends. We both attended a prestigious school and aimed for top universities, working hard academically. While Bob sweated it out in the soccer club, I was in the art club painting. I favored landscapes over portraits, especially painting wildflowers and plants over beautifully arranged ones in vases. Although our hobbies and tastes differed, we used to hang out together on weekends and often visited each other's houses. We had our playful moments, but also had serious discussions about our futures. We both wanted careers that could touch people's hearts and bring them joy.
To widen our career choices, we first need to get into a top university,
David said, and I nodded in agreement. Later on, we both successfully got into the same university, and then our goals shifted to securing jobs in top-tier companies. We believed that working for a top-tier company would enable us to influence more people. While most students were partying, we started internships from our freshman year. After many experiences, we pondered where to work. Eventually, both of us landed jobs at renowned corporations. As a new employee, I was eager to learn, embracing tasks like photocopying and document organization, and I began to find joy in my job. For the first 3 years, I gradually got assigned more responsibilities and found the work fascinating. I willingly put in overtime and even worked weekends, aiming for rapid promotions. I took on major projects and even had subordinates. And yet, I felt increasingly drained. Sure, I might be bringing joy and happiness to people through my job, but it felt like I was just a cog in the machine. I want to directly give someone the work I've accomplished and bring them joy and happiness. I've come to think this way. One day, I watched a documentary on a young man who left the city to farm in rural areas. Seeing him work with such enthusiasm sparked my interest, leading me to search online and try out farming firsthand. The touch of the soil, the satisfaction of sweating under the sun, the taste of freshly harvested produce. I was moved and decided to quit my job and take up farming in Nebraska.
You're quitting your corporate job to farm in Nebraska. Stop this madness.
When I revealed my plans over drinks with Bob after work, he strongly opposed.
We work so hard to get into these major corporations. You're handling big projects and even have a team under you. You're earning way above the average for our age. What's the problem?
I tried to explain the emptiness I felt at work and the wonderful experience I had farming, but Bob threatened, "If you decide to move to the countryside, our friendship is over." I moved to Nebraska, and we hadn't been in touch for about 10 years. This was our first meeting after a whole decade.
Let me enlighten you. This suit is from a trending brand tailored using 3D printing for a perfect fit, dyed with natural materials, and it's incredibly comfortable.
Then a beautiful and dignified voice interrupted. "Oh, you didn't know." It was Catherine. Catherine, who was the belle of our class, still maintained her beauty even in her 40s. Truth be told, back in high school, Bob and I secretly held feelings for Catherine. It was more like admiration than love, but neither of us could muster up the courage to express our feelings.
What do you mean?
A taken aback Bob asked.
It's Paul who did this dyeing.
She said, giving Bob a shy smile after being addressed by Catherine. I'm happy to receive praise from you, Bob. Thank you. I then shared with him the story of how I began taking on luxury branded clothing dyeing projects. 10 years ago, I was drawn to a documentary on TV and decided to relocate after experiencing farming. However, the reality was not as simple. Starting agriculture was full of challenges. I struggled with the unpredictable weather, pests, and diseases affecting the crops. Everything didn't go as planned. The only reason I managed to keep going was the help from the local residents. They taught me everything from how to till the soil, use farming tools, apply fertilizers, pest control strategies, to predicting the weather. Finally, I was able to cultivate crops from seeds, and the joy of harvesting was beyond words. However, when it came to selling the excess produce, the market's products were full. The locals had enough produce for their own consumption, and there was no way for me to generate income. Faced with heaps of excess vegetables and fruits, I was at a loss. While I tried giving away the excess veggies and fruits to family and friends, the shipping costs were prohibitive. Preserving them as pickles or jams was an option, but producing in bulk wasn't feasible, and I lacked the confidence in my skills and resources. That's when I stumbled upon vegetable dyeing. While the US is known for traditional dyeing using plants, like indigo dyeing, it's also possible to dye fabrics using vegetables. There are various dyeing techniques, but I wondered if I could incorporate the latest technology. I experimented using a 3D printer to create molds and stamps to imprint patterns on the fabric. Creating handmade molds required great skill, patience, and focus. If I messed up once, there's no redoing it. But designing on a computer allowed me to create intricate motifs, which the 3D printer could accurately replicate. The next challenge was dyeing with vegetables. Creating my own designs and patterns was exhilarating, similar to painting. I started by selling handkerchiefs and towels online. From there, I expanded to scarves, t-shirts, skirts, and bags. One of the products I made was a beeswax wrap, an alternative to plastic wrap, which became popular among eco-conscious women and went viral on social media. Orders surged, and I couldn't keep up. So I approached local farmers, asking if they had any unsold or imperfect produce that they could provide. Many happily offered their surplus for free to avoid disposal costs. Soon, other farmers started bringing their produce. Handling all this became too much for me alone, so I started hiring employees. One of the joys of this work was the direct feedback from consumers.
I love the unique and beautiful colors. The intricate designs are as beautiful as pieces of art. I will cherish and use them.
Hearing such praise, I always wondered what design or product to create next. Then, one day, a woman visited me. It was Catherine. Seeing my first crush after so long left me stunned. She greeted me and said,
Did you help me with my work?
She worked as a designer for a luxury apparel brand. Just like I was concerned about food waste, she was troubled by the excessive waste in the apparel industry. Additionally, with the rising eco-consciousness, she wanted to launch products incorporating recycling. Amidst everything, she bumped into a high school classmate and found out that I was selling vegetable-dyed products made with a 3D printer online. Upon hearing this, Catherine decided to check out my website. She was amazed by the variety of products and was captivated by the beauty of the dyed designs.
When I saw this, I intensely felt that I wanted you, Paul, to dye my designs, and I want to sell them as products.
Catherine passionately told me. Catherine would design molds that would be created using a 3D printer, and I would dye them. However, we'd use fabric from products that were meant to be discarded from her company. As a result, we couldn't mass produce due to the limited fabric, but since we'd used a 3D printer to create patterns tailored to each customer, the clothes would fit like bespoke garments. I was intrigued by her proposal and promised to collaborate. Catherine decided to stay over to observe my workspace and even join me in the vegetable dyeing process. I also taught her how to use the 3D printer since she had never used one before. I had dyed various garments before, but she wanted to make suits.
By wearing suits dyed using discarded vegetables and fruits, we can contribute to eco-friendliness and recycling. It also adds value, as it portrays the wearer as a conscious individual.
I had started dyeing simply because I felt it was wasteful to throw things away, but I was struck by the realization that some people wanted to buy such products to be perceived as conscientious. Nevertheless, I felt that this system of repurposing discarded clothes, using discarded vegetables and fruits for dyeing, and revamping them into new products was commendable. If you're okay with me, I'd definitely like to help out with your plan. To my response, Catherine gave a warm smile. There were numerous challenges to overcome before the product could be launched, but my past experiences working in companies and farming came handy. In essence, no moment had ever been wasted. The suits we created were widely advertised through shows, magazines, online platforms, and more. They were tailored to fit perfectly like bespoke clothing using the 3D printer. They were suitable for business and exuded sophistication while showcasing Catherine's distinct designs. But above all, the initiative to reduce clothing waste and combat food wastage resonated with the elite, wealthy individuals, especially those with a high consciousness about recycling. Catherine's designs became an instant hit, not only on social media, but it got coverage in magazines and news as well, so expanding our customer base. That's probably how Bob came to know about and purchase the suit. And without realizing that Catherine and I had a hand in creating the suit, he boasted about it as if it was his achievement.
I had no idea you had achieved so much.
In response, I said, I just wanted to bring joy and happiness to people. Hearing that, Bob suddenly looked up, reflecting on his past.
Back in high school, I had the same dreams as you. At what point did I stop having those aspirations? I became fixated on climbing the corporate ladder, just wanting to be recognized by the company's top brass.
He then smiled ruefully.
All this while, I thought you had changed, Paul, but it seems I'm the one who changed.
I looked Bob in the eyes. Staying committed to the same company since joining is commendable and deserves respect. Back then, I didn't want to be just another cog in the wheel, but without every single cog, the machine wouldn't run. That's something I never realized. Bob looked back at me and apologized.
I truly regret having looked down on you, thinking a farmer is inferior to a corporate worker, and selfishly cutting ties. I lost a valuable friend.
I extended my hand, saying, well, why not start over from here? And we shared a warm handshake.
This suit has the best color combination I've ever seen.
Bob complimented the suit, and I smiled. A few days later, Bob visited with his wife and kids. The two elementary school-aged kids experienced harvesting for the first time and even helped with vegetable dyeing.
Look, Dad, I found a really curved cucumber, and it's prickly.
Look, I dyed this handkerchief. I'm going to show it off to my friends at school.
Hearing their excitement, Bob smiled gratefully. Thanks for giving my kids such a precious experience.
Let's get lunch started. I've made something delicious.
Catherine called out. As our relationship developed through working together, we were drawn to each other, leading Catherine to move in with me. She continued her designer work from home while also assisting me in farming and dyeing. I want us to create things that will touch people and bring happiness. I plan to propose with those words.
Congratulations on your adoption. Now, it looks like you'll be taking care of the old man.
My ex-wife, Catherine, was supportive of my decision to adopt my father-in-law, Jack.
You're his son now, so it's your responsibility to take care of old fart.
After Catherine pushed the responsibility of taking care of my wheelchair-bound father-in-law onto me, she disappeared the next day with her affair partner, Mike Johnson. With Catherine gone, only Jack and I were left at home. I'm here for you. Let's get through this together. Jack smiled cunningly and said,
All right. Let's start by selling this house.
I was stunned. What was he thinking? My name is Ryan Smith, a 35-year-old nurse working at a general hospital in a city like New York. Having lost my parents young, I chose nursing to be close to those in need. My life had been centered around my job, but I felt the urgency to seriously think about marriage. Although there are many female nurses at work, I couldn't find the right match. Since I was looking to marry a woman with a different career, I secretly registered with a marriage agency. However, even after being introduced to several women, I couldn't find someone who really clicked. Even when I liked someone, I was turned down. Maybe it was because I didn't show enough interest initially. One time, I was dumped immediately after going Dutch on a first date. The marriage agency advisor advised me, saying,
Mr. Smith, women who match with you usually expect the man to pay for the first date. Many are looking to become stay-at-home wives after marriage.
I realized that getting married was tough. For me, who always thought it was normal for women to work after marriage, this was quite a culture shock. A stay-at-home wife, should I respect that wish? I'm worried that I can't afford a lavish lifestyle with my income.
Men who accept the idea of a stay-at-home wife are popular, planning a life where she relaxes at home for a few years after marriage, then starts working part-time for her own spending money, is a good idea.
The advisor suggested. Taking their advice, I agreed to the condition that my next match could be a stay-at-home wife for a while. That's when I matched with Catherine Johnson, 35 years old.
She's the same age as you, and a lively, recommended match. I think you should decide on this one.
The advisor suggested, warning that I might not have many chances left. When I met Catherine, she was a very beautiful woman who had been a campus queen during her college years. After graduating, she hadn't worked, instead helping her father at home. While her lack of work experience was a concern, I didn't dwell on it too much. I paid for not only the first date, but also the next ones. Catherine strongly desired to be a stay-at-home wife, and I was okay with that. During our dates, I was attracted to her easygoing and fearless personality. Catherine also took a liking to my serious nature. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and I got to meet Catherine's father, Jack, a farmer with a large property similar to one in Nebraska. Jack wasn't doing much farming anymore, instead earning a passive income by converting some of his land into parking spaces. Jack and I hit it off right away. He had been living with Catherine since his wife passed away 5 years ago.
I couldn't be happier if you joined our family. I think Catherine might be a bit unrestrained, but she's always helped with housework and will make a good wife.
Being able to smile every day with such a beautiful person like Catherine would definitely make me more dedicated to my work. The biggest deciding factor, though, was getting along so well with my father-in-law, Jack. When I proposed, Catherine happily accepted, saying, "I'm looking forward to it." And so, our married life began, living together with Jack. For a while after getting married, Catherine became a stay-at-home wife, taking care of both me and Jack. Then, a shopping mall opened nearby, with many trendy stores looking for part-time workers and temps. Catherine was immediately interested.
There's a jewelry store in the mall hiring part-timers. I'd love to work in such a fabulous place.
It was surprising since she wanted to be a stay-at-home wife, but I had no reason to object. If you like it, then it sounds good to me. We agreed that the money Catherine earned wouldn't go towards our living expenses, but she could use it for herself. In hindsight, this was perhaps too lenient. Once Catherine got the part-time job, she started going to work with glamorous makeup. My irregular work schedule meant we spent less time together, but Jack took the lead in doing the housework. When I returned home from night shifts, Jack would welcome me with a warm cup of tea. It's almost like I married Jack. I would joke. Jack, always cheerful, would laugh and say,
Catherine isn't home much anymore. She's always loved flashy things. There might be some dissatisfaction, but I'll take care of things. Ryan, please bear with it.
Not at all. I don't feel like I'm enduring anything. Catherine is a wife I'm proud of. But above all, I'm most proud to have an amazing father-in-law like you, Jack. Getting along with Jack was the biggest blessing. I didn't tell Jack, but I was beginning to feel a growing emotional distance with Catherine. Yet, I figured this was just how marriage was. More than anything, Jack was a person of great character whom I deeply respected. That alone made me grateful for this relationship. Then one day, when Jack was working in the garden, he suddenly collapsed and was rushed to the hospital where I work. I heard the news from the head nurse and hurried to the chief internist's office. The chief internist looked serious and told me,
Ryan, it seems Jack has been hiding his poor health. His body can't withstand surgery anymore.
It was essentially a declaration that there wasn't much time left. Doctor, how long does my father-in-law have left to live?
Even with a nurse like you, improving his quality of life, he might not last a year.
Unsure of what to do, I knocked on the door of Jack's hospital room. Jack seemed to understand his fate well.
Ryan, how long do I have? Don't hide it from me. I want to make the most of my short time left.
You might not have even a year to do the things you enjoy, but of course, I'll be by your side, supporting you to stay as healthy as possible, for as long as we can. Then Jack said something unexpected.
Ryan, please keep the truth about my remaining time from Catherine. If she knows I'm sick, she'll surely leave.
That can't be. She's your only daughter.
I'm sorry, Ryan, but she's not a daughter I can trust. If she knows I only have a year left, she might take all my property and send me to a remote hospital.
I somewhat understood Jack's perspective. Living together, I gradually saw Catherine's true nature. She was a woman who delighted in having more money. Being a nurse isn't exactly a high-paying job. It seemed like Catherine regretted marrying a nurse like me. I won't let her send you to a remote hospital. I'll take care of you until the end. Don't worry. As Jack suggested, I didn't tell Catherine about his one-year prognosis. That night, when Catherine returned from her part-time job, I only mentioned that Jack would need to live in a wheelchair. As Jack predicted, I didn't hear any sympathetic words from Catherine.
A wheelchair for life. I'm not up for taking care of that.
I'll quit my job and take care of him. Let's support him together.
You must be joking. If you quit, where will our money come from? I'm not working part-time to support the family.
Catherine stormed out after saying this and didn't come back that night. The next day, while I was wiping Jack's back in his hospital room, Catherine suddenly appeared. Out of the blue, she said she wanted a divorce. I couldn't understand what she meant. Why would she make such a choice when her father was seriously ill?
Ryan, if you stay married to me, you'll have to take care of my father. I want to free you from that burden.
I never thought of caring for Jack as a burden. It's no problem for me to work for him. Don't worry about it like that. Once Catherine realized I was determined, she shockingly said,
I hate this goody two-shoes act. I regret marrying you. If I had waited a little longer, started working at the mall, I would have had the perfect encounter.
The perfect encounter? What do you mean?
I've found true love. I shouldn't have settled for a marriage with you. He's totally different from you. A director at a famous company.
Upon asking for more details, this is what I learned. She went on to explain that a man named Mike Johnson visited her jewelry shop as a customer, and they fell in love immediately. Mike owned property in the city center and was quite wealthy. Marrying him meant she could live leisurely as a stay-at-home wife without needing to earn her own spending money. The problem was that they were both married, but as for Mike, there was no longer any love in his marriage. He wanted to divorce his wife and marry Catherine.
That's why I need to be single too. Ryan, please divorce me.
I had already realized that Catherine married me as a compromise. But this betrayal was something else. What will you do about your dad if you marry Mike? Will you take care of him properly?
Of course not. I don't want to ruin my newlywed life, taking care of Dad. I'll have him stay at some hospital outside the county.
You intend to abandon your dad? At that moment, Jack spoke up.
Enough, Ryan. Divorce Catherine. I'm ashamed to call her my daughter.
But you will be sent to a distant hospital if we do that.
I won't let that happen. I plan to adopt you as my son once you and Catherine divorce.
That's when I vaguely understood Jack's intentions.
Well, that's not a bad idea. Then Ryan can take care of Dad, and I'll be free to marry Mike.
I was completely astounded by her selfishness.
Ryan, you have no parents. I want you to be my son-in-law and stay by my side forever.
Catherine smirked.
If that happens, I can still get half of Dad's property. Even if you make a will to exclude me, I'll claim my legal share.
Catherine, always after money, was keen on such matters. But she didn't know about Jack's one-year prognosis. She probably thought the inheritance issue was far off in the future.
Mike has a mansion in the city center. I'll get part of that property, so I'll give you a little.
A few days later, Mike appeared in the hospital room. Initially, I was angry to see him, but I kept calm, considering we were in a hospital. Mike looked remorseful when he saw me.
Ryan, thank you for everything you've done for Catherine. From now on, I will make her happy. I apologize for the reversed order, Dad.
I don't want to be called Dad by someone like you. Get out.
I had to calm down an agitated Jack. Mike just stood there, enduring. He had come, knowing this might happen. He didn't seem entirely villainous. Seeing this, I even started to think that perhaps Mike was also being deceived by Catherine.
See, he's sincere, right? I love Mike very much. So, Ryan, please divorce me.
Regardless of Mike's feelings, there was no point in clinging to Catherine anymore. I was thoroughly disgusted with her and agreed to the divorce. All right, I will divorce. Do as you please from here. Then everything happened quickly. Maybe Jack wanted to act while he still could, as he seemed unusually active. I divorced Catherine and officially became Jack's adopted son. I had been Ryan Smith while married to Catherine, but now I would live as Ryan Johnson. Catherine clapped her hands gleefully.
Congratulations on the adoption. So, I guess you're in charge of taking care of the old fart now.
I couldn't help but raise my voice. To call your own father old fart, you're the worst daughter. But my words meant nothing to Catherine.
You're his son now, so you've got the responsibility of taking care of him. I guess it's good that I met a nurse, even if it comes with a divorce.
After pushing the responsibility of caring for wheelchair-bound Jack onto me, Catherine disappeared the next day with Mike. For Mike and Catherine to marry, Mike first needed to finalize his own divorce. Moreover, even after a woman is divorced, she cannot immediately remarry. But none of that mattered to me anymore. I was determined to do my best to make the rest of Jack's life as wonderful as possible. So, I wheeled Jack back to our home. It had been a while since we returned to our house, and Jack seemed to be relaxing. I tried to cheer him up a bit. Dad, I'm here with you. Let's get through this. Then Jack gave a sly smile.
All right, how about we start by selling this house?
I was taken aback. What was he thinking? Jack began to liquidate his assets. He put up for sale the land he had been renting out as monthly parking and the unused farmland, letting them go. A significant amount of money started accumulating in his bank account.
I better use the money myself before Catherine takes it. Ryan, can you indulge the whims of an old man?
As Jack's son-in-law, I had no desire for his inheritance. Jack's assets were his, and it was fine by me if he used them all.
I don't intend to leave any inheritance behind. Ryan, I'm going to enjoy life to the fullest now.
That's exactly what I wanted for him. Sounds great. Let's spend it all.
Thank you, Ryan. I'll take you up on that.
Dad, what do you want to do now? Just tell me anything, and I'll make it happen. Jack squinted as if reminiscing.
Well, I've always been a country boy and never really traveled. I'd like to go on a trip, maybe even abroad.
I thought it was a great idea. Leave it to me. How about we go on a world tour?
That would be amazing. But I'm getting weaker. I'm not sure if I can endure a flight.
Don't worry, there's a way to travel around the world even without much strength. I got Jack's consent and headed to a travel agency. Is there a luxury cruise ship coming to US soon for a world tour? The travel agent nodded emphatically and patted her chest.
Leave it to me. I'll arrange the best cruise journey for your father-in-law.
The travel agency and the cruise ship crew promised to work together to make Jack's remaining days wonderful. A week later, I, with a backpack on, wheeled Jack to a luxurious cruise ship that had arrived at New York port. The cruise ship was like a giant moving hotel. Traveling by ship was entirely different from flying. There was no need to head to airports or book hotels at each destination. We could relax in our cabin on the ship and disembark for sightseeing when docked. We could buy clothes at stores at our stops, so there was no need for a large suitcase. The ease of getting on and off the ship with a wheelchair was the main reason I recommended the cruise. We could either leisurely sightsee or stay on the ship if we felt like it. I booked a suite on the luxury cruise ship where Jack and I stayed together. Every morning began with checking his temperature and blood pressure to monitor his condition. We mostly used room service for breakfast to reduce Jack's burden. On days we moved from port to port, we'd sit on the balcony and watch the sea. For lunch and dinner, we'd choose from the many restaurants on board and enjoy luxurious meals. In the evenings, there were movies, stage shows, and magic shows, making us feel like we were visiting Broadway and Las Vegas every day. On sunny days, we'd go swimming in the pool. Jack didn't swim, but enjoyed sunbathing poolside, applying suntan oil in hopes of looking healthier. If Jack felt unwell, we'd simply relax in our cabin. As a nurse, that's when my skills came into play. The cruise manager was already aware of Jack's illness, and they assured us that a doctor was available 24/7. Jack was able to enjoy his overseas trip without any strain. For a while after we started the trip, Jack was surprisingly lively. When he felt good, he'd leave his wheelchair and go outside with a cane. After leaving New York port and passing Havana port, we went from Georgetown to Panama. Eating at the same restaurant every day, we became familiar with other tourists. Jack quickly made many friends with his cheerful smile.
I'm traveling with my son. It's the first time I've left the US in my life.
Such a dutiful son. I'm envious. My own kids seem to have forgotten about us since they got married. That's why my husband and I decided to live for ourselves.
That's all right. Leaving an inheritance only leads to disputes anyway.
Not only elderly couples, but also young, wealthy power couples and solo female travelers were among the passengers. One of them was a lady in her 60s named Sandra with elegantly dyed light purple hair. She and Jack got along particularly well. She had been living lonely days since her husband passed away 10 years ago.
I was told by my daughter and son-in-law to go on a leisurely trip instead of moping around. Looking at the sea, I realize how much I've been caught up in trivial matters throughout my life.
Jack, having lost his wife to illness just like Sandra, felt a deep connection with her. As they journeyed together, their emotional bond grew stronger The tranquil days unique to a cruise journey passed by. It was a trip completely free from the rush of catching flights. From the balcony, gazing at the blue ocean, Jack murmured,
"When I turn to ashes, scatter me into the sea. Then I can travel the world forever."
I nodded silently in agreement. A week later, we passed through the Suez Canal and moved on to Egypt, then Greece. Enjoying the beautiful contrast of white walls and sky in the Greek towns, Jack and Sandra walked together. I stepped back, careful not to intrude on their moment. The orange sunset sank into the blue horizon, a view Jack and Sandra savored side by side. When Jack felt well, I'd ask Sandra to accompany him, allowing me to take a separate route. Eventually, Jack started to show signs of fatigue, and I became more cautious in our activities. Some nights were tense, but often he'd feel better by morning. On Christmas night, Jack had a slight fever. However, he insisted on going to the dance hall to keep a promise with Sandra. I consulted with a doctor and got a prescription for a stronger fever reducer. To make Jack look a bit more energetic, I borrowed some cosmetics from the ship's staff and used foundation to improve his complexion. Dressed in a suit tailored in Italy, he looked every bit the charming gentleman with distinguished gray hair. During the day, Jack had learned some basic waltz steps from a woman who performed in the ship's musicals. He practiced the steps, leaning on a table.
"I'm nervous about messing up. I hope Sandra won't be disappointed."
Don't worry, it's not about the steps. It's the effort that counts. We used the wheelchair to the elevator, but walked slowly into the dance hall. There, elegantly dressed Sandra was waiting for Jack. I gently nudged his back, and Jack approached Sandra.
Merry Christmas, Jack.
"Merry Christmas, Sandra."
With live music playing, many couples danced gracefully around the hall. Jack extended his hand and led Sandra to the center of the dance floor. His steps were unsteady, but Sandra skillfully covered for him. This became their first and last dance together. On New Year's Eve, amidst a grand countdown party, I walked briskly through the ship's corridor, filled with tension. The ship had a reliable internet connection, always keeping us connected to US. Since I hadn't brought a computer to my room, I used the captain's quarters. That day, the call came from Catherine. Facing Catherine on a video chat after a long time, her heavy makeup seemed a bit off, making her look older.
I've been looking everywhere for you. When did you and that old man go abroad? I'm having a hard time here. Hurry back.
I think it'll be a while before we return. Is there an emergency?
I've had enough of this life. Mike divorced his wife, all right. But he gave most of his fortune to his ex-wife. Even the mansion in the city center.
He was more honorable than I thought. If he decided to divorce his wife on his own accord, it's only fair, isn't it?
Don't joke with me. We're living in a tiny 1 LDK rental now. I thought he at least had some stocks or something, but nothing?
Irritated, I hurried Catherine along. If it's not urgent, can it wait? Right now, I want to spend every second I can with my dad.
What? Something happened to the old man. Bring him here. I have things to say to him too.
At that moment, there was a knock, and the captain entered.
Ryan, your father.
I understood everything and closed my eyes.
What's going on? Say something?
I silently ended the video chat. Could you please leave it disconnected for a while? The captain quietly responded, understood. When I returned to the room, Sandra was holding Jack's hand as he peacefully closed his eyes. Following his wishes, I scattered Jack's ashes into the sea. After everything ended, I said goodbye to the other passengers and flew back to US alone. At the airport, I reunited with an angry Catherine. I had heard along the journey that Catherine had broken things off with Mike. So, you ended up not marrying and split. Tough break. But I knew Catherine wasn't expecting such words.
How could you cash everything and splurge abroad? That's the worst revenge against me.
The inheritance Catherine expected to receive was entirely used up by Jack.
Is there at least a little left?
Well, there might be some unused farmland left.
Just that land. It's practically worthless.
Still better than nothing. I'll renounce my inheritance rights, so do as you please. Catherine trembled with frustration. The thought that this was the woman I was once married to felt strange. As I started to leave, Catherine shouted at my back.
Wait, what are you planning to do now?
Just going back to my usual life. Thanks to Jack, I had the opportunity to travel around the world. I'm grateful to Jack for sharing such dream-like days with me. As for what happened to Catherine afterward, she sold the small piece of land she was left with, but it didn't amount to much. She was criticized at the jewelry shop where she used to work for fraternizing with clients and couldn't find re-employment. Known in the neighborhood for her reckless behavior, she was even turned down for a part-time job at a supermarket. Now, she lives in an old apartment away from her hometown, working in building maintenance. The days I spent with Jack greatly changed the course of my life. I started working as a nurse on a luxury cruise ship of the same company as the one we traveled on. It's a ship frequented by many American passengers. Someone who is familiar with American culture is a reassuring presence. I feel in sync with my British nurse colleague. Working while traveling the world is fantastic. Jack gave me a wonderful experience, far more valuable than any inheritance. Inspired by how Jack lived his life to the fullest until the end, I want to lead a life that I can look back on and feel proud of.